Jessica Buchanan felt the truck slow before she understood why. The road outside Galkayo was a strip of dust and ruts, pale under the late light, with thorny scrub pressed close on both sides. She and her co-worker, Paul Hagen-Thisted, were heading to the airport after finishing a training course for Somali deminers. They were tired in the normal way that comes after long days in the field, thinking about showers and beds and flights. Then a vehicle eased in front of them and stopped. The driver braked hard. Someone shouted in Somali. Jessica's door was yanked open and a hand clamped on her arm. She was ordered out, pushed forward, and her bag was ripped away. She looked for Paul and saw him being dragged from his seat too. Their captors moved with practiced confidence, scanning the road, keeping rifles trained. Jessica's mind raced through the basics. Who knows where we are? How long until anyone notices? But there was no time to form a plan. She was shoved into another vehicle, forced down low, and the convoy turned off the road into open country. Within minutes, the noise of town faded behind them. The vehicles jolted through brush and shallow gullies, stopping to argue, starting again, turning at angles that made direction meaningless. Jessica's wrists were bound. A gun rested close enough that she could smell the oil on it when the air shifted. She told herself not to cry, not to beg, not to do anything that would invite impulse. She focused on breathing and on keeping her voice steady when they demanded answers. They were held first in rough locations around the Galkayo area, moved whenever the kidnappers felt exposed. The men called themselves pirates, but there was no ocean, only inland Somalia and a hostage trade that ran on guns and fear. Jessica and Paul were kept together at times, separated at others, always under the same rules. Speak only when addressed, do what you're told, do not try to run. Guards slept in shifts. Rifles were never far. When they moved, it was on foot or by vehicle, with Jessica pushed along and watched for any hesitation that could be punished. The kidnappers wanted ransom, and they wanted it enormous. Jessica and Paul worked for the Danish Refugee Council on a demining project, and that fact became leverage in the captors' minds. Messages were sent. Demands came back larger than anything realistic. The council tried to work through Somali intermediaries, elders and traditional leaders who sometimes had influence over armed groups, but the captors rejected offers and talked as if they were negotiating with governments, not a humanitarian organization. Days turned into weeks. Jessica learned how to measure time without clocks. She tracked it by the rhythm of guard changes, by the feel of sun on her skin, by the nights when the cold settled in and made her bones ache. Food was inconsistent, sometimes rice, sometimes bread, sometimes nothing, until someone decided to throw them a small portion. Water was controlled like currency. When they were moved, she was made to walk even when her legs shook, and she learned to conserve energy by keeping her steps small and even, refusing to show weakness that might invite cruelty. The men guarding them could be bored 1 hour and cruel the next. Some wanted to talk, asking questions about America, about money, about whether anyone would pay. Others used threats as entertainment. Jessica learned which voices came with violence and which came with empty bravado. She learned to keep her face neutral, to answer carefully, and to avoid anything that could be read as defiance. Then she got sick. It started as a urinary tract infection and became something more serious as days passed without treatment. Fever came in waves. Pain sharpened in her back. She vomited when the heat peaked. She asked for antibiotics and was mocked. She asked for more water and was told to wait. The fear changed shape. It wasn't only fear of being shot. It was fear of dying slowly in the bush with no medicine, while men with rifles argued over ransom numbers. Paul, older and less resilient to the conditions, tried to conserve strength. They spoke when they were allowed to, quiet conversations that kept them human, family details, memories, small plans for what they would do if they got out. Jessica clung to those words because the days were designed to strip identity away. The captors controlled where she sat, when she stood, when she ate, when she slept. Every decision belonged to someone else. By early 2012, reports reached U.S. officials that Jessica's health was deteriorating. Behind the scenes, intelligence and rescue planning accelerated. A rescue would be risky for the simplest reason. Captors with guns can kill hostages in seconds. But as the weeks stretched on, the calculus shifted. Waiting carried its own deadly risk. If a location could be confirmed and a window opened, a raid might be the only way out. On January 25, 2012, Jessica and Paul were being held at a compound about 12 miles north of the town of Adado in central Somalia. The night was quiet in the way desert nights can be, with distant sounds that never fully resolve. Guards hovered near, their rifles propped close, their attention split between boredom and suspicion. In the darkness above them, a US C-130 crossed the sky. 24 Navy SEALs parachuted into the desert, landed without lights, regrouped, and began moving on foot toward the compound. Jessica did not see them arrive. She heard something first, movement that did not match the usual shift of guards. Then the night exploded. Gunfire cracked through the compound. Shouts followed. The kidnappers reacted in panic, scrambling for weapons, firing back. The SEALs drove forward through the chaos with speed and discipline, targeting the hostage takers and pushing toward the hostages. The exchange was violent and brief. When it ended, all 9 captors at the site were dead. Jessica and Paul were pulled out alive. Hands that were firm but careful guided her away from the gunfire. Voices spoke English in close, controlled tones. She was told she was safe. The relief hit like a physical blow. For months, she had trained herself not to hope too hard, because hope can get you killed. Now hope was standing in front of her in night vision gear, checking her quickly, moving her toward extraction. They were flown out and taken to Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti, where medical staff treated dehydration, infection, and the damage of prolonged deprivation. Jessica's body was exhausted, and the infection that had been worsening finally met antibiotics and clean water. As her physical danger receded, her mind began to catch up. Freedom did not feel like celebration at first. It felt unreal, like stepping into bright light after living in shadow for too long. In the days that followed, she returned home and faced the hardest truth survivors learn: rescue is an ending, but it is also a beginning. Recovery meant sleep that came in fragments, memories that arrived without warning, and the slow work of feeling safe again. But she had survived captivity in hostile territory for nearly 3 months, held at gunpoint while ransom demands stalled and her health declined, and she had made it out alive. She still hears that door close in her sleep now. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.